let me get this straight. Let me just get this straight. So we have an older woman who's sleeping with a man whose wife's passed away. And the only reason why that man whose wife's passed away is sleeping with the older woman is because, well, basically he feels bad for her, pity fucks her, just to basically keep her beautiful mind at work. Only then to have her choke the life out of a 5-year-old girl because she feels inadequate as a sexual partner, to then jump off a balcony to her death, thus committing suicide. Only to then have the man whose wife passed away sleep with the woman who committed suicide's daughter. Cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria, what the fuck. Hello, insects of YouTube, it is Adam Nice from Adam Nice, and welcome to the next episode of Congratulations, a Neon Genesis Evangelion Retrospective. Today we're going to be talking about the episode known as He Was Aware That He Was Still a Child, which is an interesting episode, which, unlike some of the other ones where it focuses on the thoughts of other people, this one is nothing but really memories of other people. Now, there is a difference. The thoughts of other people are very much so like, well, basically episode 25 and 26, and that's it. But memories actually show some plot development. So that's basically the gist of this entire episode. And I'll just tell you right now that I am looking at the director's cuts, not the original aired versions. Which this version is actually 31 minutes longer. That's over 10 minutes worth of footage. No, sorry, not over. Close to 10 minutes worth of new footage added in here, which is significant for just a regular old show like this. So if you haven't seen the director's cuts, please do so. They are up online for free. I checked and stuff like that. Please do so. So let's just dive right on into this motherfucker and wish me luck, man. Wish me luck. So something that's different right from the get-go about this is that it doesn't open up with the stereotypical song. It opens up instead with nothing but this archival footage of a room and basically it being destroyed by second impact. Now, a lot of it is a bunch of jumbo mess because everyone's speaking over each other and stuff like that, but there are a couple things that you do hear. One, you hear the Lance of Longinus. 2, you hear Adam. 3, you hear a name called Lilith. And 4, we hear a lot of names that, like we hear Gendo Ikari, we also hear, man, is this an effective opening. In fact, I'm gonna go this far. I love this opening. If I was to direct a live-action adaptation of this movie, of the show, into a movie, one, it couldn't just be made into one movie, I'd make it into 3, or possibly 4, basically like the rebuild movies, but this is how I'd open the movie. Exactly like this. Have a webcam archival footage, people speaking, ape shit going on, and you suddenly just see the white hands of whatever that giant being was that was at the South Pole when Second Impact happened. And then it just cut to the titles of the movie. But this is a really effective opening in multiple ways. Because 1, it's really ominous, and 2, this is a great example of less is more. A lot of it is being left to your imagination, which I applaud. And I know a lot of that had to do with because of literally the lack of money for this show. But I mean, this just brings up that example, or that quote that Nicholas Meyer said, where less is more. Not less is more, where he says, art relies on restrictions. Because though you don't really see anything, you hear it. And that makes you visualize it even as it being worse than what it probably actually is. Because that's human nature. So I believe this opening is unbelievably clever. Now we know from the get-go, Kaji is up to something. We've always known that Kaji's up to something. But you know what's bad? He calls Masato and leaves a message, though we don't hear it until the end of the episode. And then he looks down at his card and he says, "My last assignment." It's red, just like blood. Which really means that Kaji knows he's in some unbelievably deep shit. Like, this is deeper than what he had anticipated. Which also means that he thinks he's probably going to die. In fact, that's what the message he leaves actually entails. And that's just something I admire about Kaji, is that he knows he's going to die. However, there is still a slight chance that he'll live. Therefore, he's grabbing onto that chance and is basically running with it. That's very optimistic if you look at it the way I have. And of course, when Misato calls, or when Kaji calls Misato, Misato is at Nerve HQ the entire time, and she basically gets called because they hear that Fuyutsuki, the vice commander, has been abducted by Seilei, though they don't really know who quite yet. And that means that Seilei and the committee are two different entities, which we discover in this episode, which I think is another clever thing. So, like, despite them saying that the committee is Seilei, Seilei is another thing. There's more members of Seilei, and they're a lot darker. They have a lot more sinister undertones to what they want to do, which we discover in full force in this episode. However, at the same time, I need to take this off for a second. I love how Misato goes along with basically these police forces that are going with her. Because they say somebody has been hacking into your files and stuff like that, and there's only one major suspect, and that is Ryoji Kaji. And of course she's like, well, considering my relationship with him, it's quite understandable why you put me under arrest. And actually, as an act of good measure, even though I'm pretty sure Misato could kick these guys' ass, she actually puts her pistol down on the table before they even say they're going to arrest her. And I love that. I just love that little bit of good measure from her. I just thought that was a great little character moment. Finally, we get to see those big monolith-looking thingies. I love those. In fact, you know, beforehand when we had the committee where everyone was glowing a different color and so on and so forth and stuff like that, yeah, that was fine, but they weren't quite as ominous as this shit. And I know that Hideki Anno only had this happen because he didn't need to animate them, because he was running out of money, and this way you could just look at a picture and shit like that, or just simply pan the picture up and down with whatever editing force that you have. However, I think this works. I think they work a lot better as these giant monolith things, because they're just a lot more creepy that way. You only hear their voices. They're very mechanical voices. You don't know who's behind them. And all you really know is their number. The only thing that we know is that the chairman's name is Gale. And I love how Fuyutsuki is just like, are your invitations always so violent? He's just so smug about it. And that's such a Fuyutsuki thing, because we get that throughout the entire thing, that he acts very much like an older man, that he acts very much so like, yeah, this is what happened, well, we gotta get past it. And even here, he's like, yeah, whatever, no matter what you do, I'm not gonna really talk, am I? And of course, I think the committee knows this. I'm sorry, Seilei knows this. And I just love the revelation that goes on Fuyutsuki's voice when all of Seilei shows up. And he's like, oh my, to quote George Takei. And then what happens is one of the members of Seilei calls him Professor Fuyutsuki. And of course, because that happens, it's actually nice to see him actually show some emotion, and he actually smiles. Nostalgically, very nostalgically at this. And then it cuts immediately to 1999 Kyoto, where we see a bunch of students running up to him, so on and so forth, and being like, oh, hey, you want to get a drink with us? It shows what kind of person Fuyutsuki was. Almost like Gendo. Gendo and Fuyutsuki are very parallel, to go into like that full circle kind of thing that I was talking about again. Fuyutsuki and Gendo are very parallel, because beforehand we clearly see that he is a rather popular individual. Kids want to drink with him, kids just want him to be around, and he also seems to be a rather emotional person. He's not like, okay, let's just share everyone's feelings kind of person. No, he's very much like he wears his heart on his sleeve. What he's feeling, he projects. And in fact, he's actually very eccentric, because later on in this episode, he discovers that both Gendo and Yui, Gendo's wife, are going to Antarctica. In fact, he actually was like, oh my god, they're going to Antarctica now? He actually projects that, and that doesn't usually happen. He's not really angry, he's just absolutely shocked that that's happened. So I like this sort of regression in his character from this point early on to now. Because it shows just what Nerve and Seilei have done to him, and basically anyone. from this group. In fact, I'm not going to say the line now, but there's a line that perfectly describes what's happening here and everyone involved with this Evangelion project. So he's drinking with another professor in a bar, and that professor's like, you should really do more about your social life and stuff like that. And what's interesting about Fuyutsuki is Fuyutsuki just looks rather content there, and he's like, I love experimenting, I love my job, this is perfect, this is my kind of life. And then he brings up Yui Ikari, which we'll get into more of that last name persona later, but it intrigues him, which is something that I believe that if that was to happen now, or during the time when he's being investigated by Seele and shit like that, he wouldn't have even blinked an eye at the name. But here he blinks an eye. He's like, "Oh, really? I'm intrigued." And the only reason why I think he's really intrigued is because she wrote this brilliant paper, and she's only barely in college or wherever this is, and the other professor was like, "She knows how to write shit." And so, of course, Fuyutsuki goes to see her. And I also need to know, because this is very much so a Fuyutsuki episode, and I love Fuyutsuki, I always have. And what's cool about him here is that we get to see him sounding excited. He doesn't sound like that normal deadpan voice, like, hello, goodbye. You can't do that. If you do that, and this is what, you don't think that they're gonna try to, they're not going to try to start the human instrumentality here, do you? He's not that kind of monotone kind of character. Here, he's actually, in fact, when he's speaking to Yui for the first time, he's like, well, I actually read your paper, and I have to say I'm quite impressed. He's speaking with inflections. He's speaking with emotions, and of course, he's very much so attracted to Yui, and rightfully so. Yui is a very, very beautiful woman. Very young and beautiful woman, and clearly extremely talented. And of course, it's no shit that, a professor would be attracted to her in that way. I also need to bring this up. This is our first glimpse that we get. We've got our first true glimpse that we get of Shinji's mom, Yui Ikari. And man, does she know what we really expected. She comes across as a very warm woman, a very selfless woman. In fact, that's exactly what she is. She is pretty much the exact opposite of Gendo, who Gendo is very ambitious and very, very selfish. She's very selfless, and again, goes into that whole thing that I believe is somewhat of a theme in here, though I can't really be sure, and that is opposites attracting. I've said that several times beforehand, where I talked about specifically Shinji and Asuka. However, what's really interesting is that Fuyutsuki's like, what do you plan, biotech and stuff like that? And he's completely shocked when she gives the answer, actually, I just want to become a wife and have children. And he's completely shocked by that just by the look in his face, which I found I chuckled at, because his face was like, oh, like a brilliant woman like this. Fuyutsuki has no comprehension of what that even means, which is hilarious. And of course, we also get this reference, or we get a hint of what the heck Gendo and Fuyutsuki are doing, is because Seele is asking Fuyutsuki back in modern times, or back in 2015, which is only a year away. They're speaking like, you've created a god, Eva Unit 01. No one man should contain that much power, to quote one of the Seele modules. And of course, Fuyutsuki's very quiet, and then they ask the question, should we trust Gendo Ikari? Then we cut immediately to 2000, I think it was actually 1999, and Fuyutsuki gets a phone call about a man named Gendo Robogunbi. Ikari isn't his last name. That's key. Which actually shows how much of an impact Yui actually had on Gendo when they finally do get together. Because clearly, Gendo, a very selfish person, does a very selfless thing and actually gives up his last name for hers, which is very unorthodox in Japan. It's actually unorthodox pretty much everywhere in the, world, that a man would give up his last name for hers. And Yui doesn't strike me as a person that would really give a fuck if she gave up her last name. However, it's interesting that Gendo was the one to bring it up, and Gendo was the one to change his last name to Ikari. One, it makes his name sound more badass, and two, it actually showed that he does have some character progression in terms of, or some character traits, and just how much he loves this woman, and just how much he cares about her, which is key. Now, I also want to go with an artistic choice. If you look at how a very a younger Gendo. When Fuyutsuki is appointed his guardian, look at his design. Look at Gendo's design. Doesn't he look like Shinji? Doesn't Shinji look an awful lot like him? Like, you can picture Shinji. Of course, this is before he wore those glasses that he always wears. He looks just like Shinji, which I think was a nice artistic choice, because if you look at it, Shinji is going to become Gendo if he makes all the wrong decisions. Luckily, he doesn't. And we find out that right from the get-go that Gendo has always been that kind of fuck you kind of attitude rookie, where he's basically, if he was a cop, he'd be the bad cop, but trying to be the good cop, if that makes any sense. He's that kind of character. And then this brings up an actual major character that describes Gendo's character always in a nutshell. He says, "I'm not used to being liked, Commander. I'm not used to being liked, Professor, but I am well familiar with hatred." That explains Gendo's character right there. That one line explains everything with his character. Very well written. Now, I feel a little bad for Fuyutsuki, because clearly he's fallen for Yui. Maybe not in the love sense, but he's very much like, I feel for her. And I don't know quite how far it goes. Of course, we do find out in End of Eva, but he is very shocked to hear that a girl like her, a very nice girl, is dating a jackass like Gendo. And she's like, well, he actually is very sweet if you get to know her. Just, again, to show how much Yui means to Gendo. Which is a nice little touch. Another thing that I really like about this episode, first off, I want to say I love this episode. This is probably my third favorite episode. We see the impacts of Third Impact. Third Impact happened, no one would be alive. Second Impact, we see like all the shores all fucked up, we see people living in shacks, people living in shambles and stuff like that. Now, I like that a lot, and I love Fuyutsuki's little character thing, just to show what kind of person he at least used to be. Fuyutsuki is there, right? He hates living in this area, especially on the coast, but he says, but we're running extremely short on doctors, therefore he's staying. Well, he could easily move, I believe the guy says north, and, live a better life. And he's like, no, it smells like oil, I don't want to go there. When really he's lying, he would much rather go up there. But he's being very selfless and helping people, which I thought was a very nice little note. Fuyutsuki is chosen by Gendo to go to Antarctica, which is basically now turned into a dead zone. And I love the artwork there, where it's like all the ice is gone and the seas are red, just like blood. Again, which is a theme in the next couple episodes, or the color scheme is very red. Which is representation of the color of blood, which I know that for a fact. Fuyutsuki suspects something right from the get-go, because Gendo happened to leave one day before Second Impact happened. He knows something's up, but he can't quite place his finger on it. We get some more story of Misato's background too, because of course when she's all alone in isolation, what happens when you're in isolation, you tend to think a lot, and that's exactly what Misato does. We discovered that after Second Impact, her being the only survivor because of her father, she almost became a mute, though she clearly isn't a mute because she talks up a storm. However, she remains quiet. She needs to be taken care of constant, because she acts like she can't hear anything, and of course she doesn't speak for 2 years, which is a long time to fucking not speak. Now, and then after that, we discover with Fuyutsuki and Gendo, who were there the entire time, which kind of interjects that whole everything kind of connects and everything like that, where it's almost, again, that goes back to that omnipotent feeling where it's like somebody's over your shoulder controlling the strings, and that's exactly what it feels like here, how Gendo really controlled Misato's life from this point out. It's very creepy and ominous. It doesn't help that piano music is so creepy as well. Anyways, back to what I was talking about. We discovered just the effect of Second Impact and how terrible Third Impact would be, because Second Impact destroyed everything at the microscopic level. Now that's near damn impossible. I just want to point that out right now from a scientific standpoint. So if that was able to do it, just imagine what Third Impact could do. And Fuyutsuki explained that it altered everything from atmospheric, or how the atmosphere, what elements are in the atmosphere. It affected the groundwork. It melted all the ice, which explains the flooding, and so on and so forth. And just the absolute devastation and horror that Second Impact caused, which I think is just extremely well drawn. And again, everything has like this red overtone to it, and it's just so creepy, so well put together, in my opinion. Now, it becomes Fuyutsuki's obsession when the UN, specifically Chairman Keel, who becomes the head of Sele, lies about it, saying it's a meteor. So it becomes his obsession to find out what really happened, because there's a lot of mysteries there. There's something about this extreme, like, Eden-style biodome underneath Antarctica and this giant of light. That sounds awful familiar, doesn't it? Oh yeah, what's in Tokyo 3? Oh my god, that's right, a huge Eden-like biodome and a fucking giant of light. Oh! Anyways, and what's sad is that Fuyutsuki, this is when we start seeing the Fuyutsuki we know come out. And that's because she's like, even though if Yui's involved, I'm going to have to bring this to the light, which might mean hurting her. Because he becomes so obsessed with finding the right answer, he doesn't care who gets in his way. That's the Fuyutsuki we know. In fact, the first time he sees Yui, she goes, "Oh, it's been a long time, Professor." She's happy to see him, and then all of a sudden he goes, "Yes, it has." And all he does is just walk right past her, doesn't even bow to her, doesn't even shake her hand, whatever the fuck they do. Just walks right past her, leaving Yui in the dust. Unbelievably sad. And that is, unfortunately, the Fuyutsuki we know. So here we discover that Gendo is responsible for second impact. Whatever Gendo did, he knew it was going to happen, and that's why he left. We kind of inferenced that this was going to happen, but Fuyutsuki is the one that... I always say Ryutsuki, I'm sorry. Fuyutsuki is the one that uncovers it. Now, when Fuyutsuki lays everything down, Gendo is very impressed, and I think this is the moment where Gendo is like, "Hey, you want to come work for me?" You know, kind of like how the American government hires hackers, people who do a lot of things that are illegal, but they hire them anyways because they're so smart at what they do. Fuyutsuki, clearly, when he has a goal, he's going to accomplish it. He's very smart in wanting to accomplish it. He's very smart in approaching everything that happens. So, of course, it makes sense why Gendo would bring him up. And I just love that line. He's like, "Oh, by the way, I know that bringing up a child is expensive, but this is a bit much," going into Gendo's personal finances, which is just a nice little kind of comedical touch. And here is why we discover... this is the episode that we discover why the biodome, or the geofront, is there. And that's because it's identical to what was underneath Antarctica that happened with second impact. Which, of course, scares the living shit. It scared the living shit out of me. It scares the living shit out of Fuyutsuki. He's like, "Oh my god, then if that happens here, then that means... if that happened there, then that means it could happen here. Fuck." Gendo wants to repeat that incident again. For some reason, he doesn't understand why. Quite frankly, I don't really understand why. He wants to repeat that situation again. However, we discovered that Gendo was doing this not really in his self-interest. Well, now he is, but back when Second Impact happened, it was really because he was saving humanity, doing the least possible amount of damage. The only way to save humanity from keeping Third Impact from being Second Impact was to have that contact with what it is now. I'll explain that in episode 24, or more of that in episode 24. Because if they waited any longer, then what would have happened is an angel would have found that and created Third Impact. If they just did what they did now, do it man-made, make an artificial impact, it would basically postpone Third Impact. It'd postpone the annihilation of humanity, giving them time for some sort of defense mechanism. Now, that's unbelievably smart, but yet unbelievably tragic at the same time. And that brings up the quote, "The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few," which I think is horseshit. However, here it makes sense. And though it wiped out half of the human population, it brings up that quote that Fuyutsuki always says. Fuyutsuki's like, "I'd rather live in a world where humans live in sin than we're in a world where there are no humans at all." Now we get an interesting point, is when they go into there, we finally see Ritsuko's mom working on the Magi. And we see how dark her hair is, and we actually get to see... and Ritsuko's mom comes off as a very dedicated woman. And that's exactly what she is, except she's not dedicated in the right places. Ritsuko's mom is dedicated to her work, and her work only. Now, she loves her daughter. Don't think that she doesn't. In fact, she explains so several times how much she loves Ritsuko. But she just doesn't know how to show it. So this isn't like a Gendo, Shinji, Misato's dad kind of deal here. She does legitimately love her daughter, but she just feels that she's failed raising her in the right way. And of course, we get a glimpse of a young Ritsuko as well, confirming that she has dyed her hair. And just to make it even more to the point, her eyebrows are a different color, meaning that clearly she's dyed her hair to cover up her past a little bit, where she's hiding something. And here we see her very innocently. We see her no lipstick, real hair color. We see her the way how she actually is for the only time. And I mean that to be like the only time in the history of the show. Now this is also before Nerve. This organization that they're working for with right now is called Gahern, and we discover the first Evangelion, Unit 0, which is the one that Rey winds up piloting. And this being a prototype to combat the Angels. Basically, they took the spirit of Adam, they took the essence of Adam, and they're going to infuse it with a human soul, and therefore make it a weapon to use against the Angels, which is what they're using as their defense. Does that make any sense at all? No. But it's just awesome. Okay, I don't care. That is fucking awesome. And of course, it's very creepy imagery. We see like these wires going down, they look like veins, and we see the spinal cord of the Evangelion going down, and we discover in 2 episodes from now, we discover just how many trials and errors they went through and how many people they killed just to make one. And then we start getting into Ritsuko's memories, and just see how close her and Misato actually were. And this just makes it all the more sad, especially what comes up in the next 2 episodes, specifically in episode 23, what winds up fucking happening. However, it is nice to see them kind of go back to being friends again, and you clearly see that they care for each other, because Misato's very happy, and she's making Ritsuko happy. That's the key thing. She, though annoyed, she is very happy, and there's just that's good. That's a good friendship, because that's exactly what friends do. Friends get annoyed with each other, but they still remain friends. Now, this entire sequence, what I find interesting about it is that it's done with nothing but notes passed to each other, letters passed to each other. Clearly, Ritsuko and her mom are so far away that they can do nothing but write notes to each other, and you hear the tenderness in both their voices towards each other. They both do love each other, Ritsuko and her mom. They do. At least it's very hard to explain, but you can tell that they love each other. You can tell that, they have feelings for each other. Ritsuko looks at her mom like a mother, and of course, her mother, though she thinks she's failed, looks at Ritsuko as her daughter. And just the warmth in their voices, just a testament to the voice acting, it's perfect and extremely well executed. Though there is something there that's a little bit odd just by the dialogue, you just hear the warmth in their voice and just how they feel talking to each other, how comfortable they feel talking to each other, to show just what their relationship is. Now this is a very Freudian thing to talk about. What happens is Ritsuko speaks about Misato having a backside to her that disturbs her, quite frankly, and of course, and that is she met Kaji, and all they've done is fuck. And though there's something more going on there, but this is from Ritsuko's point of view, and Ritsuko's mom says something interesting. She goes, it's like just normal. She's like, this is just normal, because probably that's inferencing that she went through the same thing. But Ritsuko's mom is like, oh, that's normal, and I feel like I failed as a mother to you because of that. You've had no men in your life. Now that's a very Freudian thing. That's a very, very Freudian thing. And we all know that. Hideaki Anno was a Freudian. Even though I don't really agree with a lot of what Freud says, there is quite a bit of it that I do tend to kind of lean towards. And this is no example of his philosophy coming through here. Baby Shinji's adorable. Now, Fuyutsuki has agreed at this point, that I think this is the year 2005 according to this, to work with Gahern and Seele. And he admits to Yui when they're just out together on the beach, he admits to her, he's like, I don't believe in what your husband Seele and Gahern's ideals are. I believe in what your ideals are, just to show that he still has feelings towards her and that they've only grown since he's agreed to work with them. And of course, she's taking care of Shinji, she's acting very warm, but something is off about her. And we discover what is off about her in the next, unfortunately, tragic scene. And it just makes it all the more tragic, just because we see baby Shinji and how happy he looks. He looks just content to be a baby. His mom at least cares for him, and believe it or not, Gendo actually does. Gendo actually does care about Shinji because we see him in the next scene where he's working and stuff, but Fuyutsuki's like, why the fuck is this child fucking doing here, fucking goddamn piece of fucking shit? Okay, maybe not quite like that, but something like that. And Gendo's like, they're like, oh, that's Professor Akari's son. And Gendo was always like giving a quick glance. It's a testament to the animation. Again, you have to like almost watch it frame by frame to notice it. Shows you how obsessed with the show I am. He looks over like every once in a while over at Shinji to make sure he's okay. I love that little note, and just makes the fucking so much more tragic when you look back at the fucking reality that is this world. God damn, is that kid cute. And actually, it's really sad because here's we discover what happened with Yui and the Evangelion. And what happens is this experiment was going on and she becomes embedded with the Evangelion. Now, they don't show it, which I actually think was the right decision not to show it, because it leaves a lot more to the imagination and the disturbed nature of the show. However, this day was the incident that Yui got sucked into the Evangelion and became the Evangelion Unit 01. And that's why she brought Shinji. Now that sounds disturbing, but yet it doesn't, because she knows what's going to happen when he turns 14. She does. She's already predicted the future. She knows everything. Which also explains why she was very cold. While beforehand she was very warm, very, very open about how she feels, very open with other people, very human with other people. Here, she's just like, yeah, I know. She basically knows that her life, as she knows it, will end. She will still be alive, but it won't be the same as it was before. And this is basically her saying goodbye. And here we discover that Ritsuko's mom has had feelings for Gendo, has had feelings for Gendo for quite a while, and she was secretly hoping that something bad would happen to Yui. And what I would say that's extremely disgusting, extremely pathetic of a human existence. However, what I like about the scene is that she admits how pathetic I am. She admits, and she's disgusted with herself. She's absolutely appalled with herself. The fact that when Yui dies, she's happy about it. She's appalled by that. She's appalled by her actions, which I actually admire a bit about her character, is the fact that she is still human enough to admit that that's disgusting, the fact that you'd wish the death of a human being. And Yui's death was the birth of the Gendo we know. Very cold, very distant, very monotone type of Gendo. In fact, he even starts dressing differently after that. Now, there's a great bit of imagery going on here, and that is Gendo proposes to Seele this new project, the Human Instrumentality Project. This is the first time we ever really hear about it. And we have here this beautiful imagery of Gendo speaking about the Human Instrumentality Project, and a cross, a shadow of a cross is coming out of him, showing that he is, it is literally foreshadowing, at least thematically, that he wants to become God. That's very, because we kind of got a hint of that beforehand, but beforehand we just kind of brush it off as him being ambitious, him being, I want to know answers. Here it's literally him being, I want to become God. He's becoming very zealous in that sort of manner. I also thought it was nice the fact that we see the first time Ritsuko shows up to Gahern, she actually gets lost in the HQ, just like Masato did when she was first, just to show how new she was to the project at the beginning of the show. I thought that was a nice little touch as well. And then we see the pimp that is Gendo getting smitten with Ritsuko's mom, and unfortunately Ritsuko sees this, and that confuses the living fuck out of Ritsuko. And thus we get Rei 1. We get the first Rei. And we see Rei very monotone the same way as before, but something a lot more innocent about her. Now, I don't know if that's because she's a lot younger. She's still very much so a child here, but she looks so much more innocent than what she does in the show. Here she looks like she actually has feelings and emotions. Of course, we find out that she doesn't in literally the next scene, but whatever. And what's sad is that Ritsuko's mom actually points out to Gendo, she's like, oh, I thought you had a son. She's like, oh no, this isn't Shinji, meaning Shinji, fuck that kid, he's off in Never Never Land, he's fairy dust to him, which is tragic. He cares, and he's literally showing so much affection towards Rei. She's like, this is this, oh, isn't that a beautiful view? And she's like, yeah. just a despicable fucking human being, just abandoning his child like that. That's what makes me love him so much. And that's when Ritsuko's mom actually points out and goes, she looks an awful lot like Yui. Now, there's a great mother-daughter relationship moment going on here. And that's when she's explaining to Ritsuko's mom's explaining to her about the Magi, one being a part of her as a mother, one being part of her as a woman, and the other part of her being a part of a scientist, which are three, and I've already talked about this before, so I'll mention it briefly here, three very distinctively different parts of the mind, which will be combating each other to make the most logical answer, which I believe is a very actually smart way to get information forward. And they both look so happy with what they're doing. And they're like, oh, this is what's happening, oh my god, that's so cool. A very great moment between the two. It shows just how much love they actually have for each other. Now, of course, we discover here that literally in this scene, what happens next is unbelievably disturbing and fucked up and at the same time tragic. See, that again, they go into a dialogue of how Misato broke up with Kaji and shit like that, and that's a very kind of womany gossipy, no offense, womany gossipy kind of discussion going on here, which is just another thing that I love about the show, is how human and how realistic they portray that conversation. I feel like that's something that a mother would have a conversation with her daughter, because mothers do that. Mothers ask all these questions. And you see, she does act very motherly, which just makes what the fucking comes like makes. Baby Ray shows up, and what's really sad is that you have Ritsuko's mom looking surprised, but then she just turns into a kind of motherly figure. She's like, oh, do you want to come with me? Do you need help? Stuff like that. Talks in a very nice, respectful voice. And then Ray calls her an old hag. And she gets all pissed off. She's like, well, you don't call women old hags. And then she says, well, that's because that's what Gendo calls you, old hag. And what does she do? She strangles Baby Ray. Now, let me explain to you how fucked up that is. In the opening of this video, I explained how the only reason why he wound up fucking her is basically he's pity fucking her and shit like that. And the reason why, and the thing that disturbs me so much about this, isn't the fact that she was sleeping with a man whose wife passed away and she's a much older woman, and the fact that he's sleeping with her just because he pity fucks her. Though that's disturbing on its own right, if you really think about it, that can be debated. What can't be debated is this. She discovers, and it's inferenced here, that Ray is a clone. Ray is a clone, right? Ray is a clone, which I actually gathered this on my first viewing. I did. That Ray is a clone. Because when she strangles Ray, not only does she break the kid's neck, but she just flats out kills her. And what is she a clone of? Ray is a clone of Yui. Is a DNA copy of Yui. Now, doesn't that explain an awful lot of, Shinji's relationship with her and so on and so forth with Ray and shit like that? That explains a lot, but we'll get into that in episode 23. Here, the only reason why Ritsuko's mom strangles her is because she feels inadequate as a sexual partner. Okay. Alright, considering all the other fucked up shit that's gone on in this series and the more fucked up shit that happens in the rest of this episode, in the rest of this show, yeah, I'll buy it. However, then to make things even worse, after Ritsuko's mother strangles and kills Baby Ray, she can't live with herself the fact that she's let her frustration get the best of her as a woman, which is foreshadowed to End of Eva. The woman side of her mind took over, which is again foreshadow of End of Eva. And she killed her, and she can't live with that, so what does she shoot? She jumps off the fucking balcony and kills herself. And okay, granted, I'm glad that they don't show that, because I think just the imagery of her body outline and the blood splat everywhere does the job just fine. But not only did we get an older woman strangling a baby, but we also got her jumping off a fucking balcony and killing herself. There's two kinds of fucked ups. Well, there's a lot of kind of fuck ups if you really look at it, but this is why I admire how fucked up this show is. I actually admire how fucked up this show can get. from a psychology point of view. I already mentioned how like a lot of animes go really over the top with what they do, like beating up a dead puppy, people turning into blood pinatas, shit like that. I don't like that kind of fucked up unless there's a reason to it, other than to shock you. This isn't here just to shock you. It's not. There's a deeper meaning behind it that goes into psychological human, or how human minds work. And that's what Hideaki Anno does. Hideaki Anno does is he basically takes the psychological stuff that happens in our mind and exaggerates it. That's this entire show. This entire show is really just about growing up, coming to terms to who you are, and all the fucks, all the shit life will throw at you in the process. It's really all the show's about. It's not making a religious statement. It's not really doing anything really significant other than telling you this is what life is like and how life just fucking sucks. Doesn't that make you want to kill yourself? Yeah. That's why I'm wearing a helmet too. It's because I was bracing myself for what this episode was coming on, because it just hits you like a fucking freight train. It's like it's been building up to these last 6 episodes, these last 4 episodes, 5 and 6 don't even, 25, 26, don't even fucking get me started on those pieces of goddamn horse shit. And it was that incident, the incident of Ritsuko's mom both killing Baby Ray. I just want to bring that out. She kills Baby Ray and then jumps off of a fucking balcony, killing herself. That stops Gahern and Nerve is born. The sad part is about this episode is we haven't even gotten to the part that makes me choke up. That hasn't even gotten to the best part of this goddamn episode. So we discover what Kaji's last mission is, and that is to basically break Ryutsuki out of there, when in all reality, I believe Fuyutsuki was meant to be broken out just so that Seele can get their hands on Kaji so that Fuyutsuki can kill him. Now, there was a big debate. Of course, that's the sad part of this episode, is my man, Kaji, dies and gets killed. And we never find out really who his killer is, but we can inference who his killer is. Now, I have seen the original aired version as well. Now, the original aired version, after Kaji is shot, the screen cuts to black and immediately cuts to a shot of Misato's door, which led to a lot of people speculating that, before my helmet kicks the tripod, speculating that Misato was the one to actually kill Kaji. But it isn't. The director's cut throws that idea out the window. In fact, Hideaki Anno said in an interview that he was shocked that people would think that. The director's cut takes that out of there, it splits the pace up, and shows that it was most likely Ryutsuki, because Ryutsuki was the only one with Kaji at the time. And so I believe that this is all part of Seilei's plan. I really do. Because it says earlier in the episode, it says, it becomes a theme. In fact, it is said a couple times. One, when Yui says it to Fuyutsuki, she goes, "We're all just as easily replaceable as the other. We're all equal in terms of that playing field. We all can be replaced." And then Ritsuko's mom says it to Rei when she's strangling her. She's like, "You're just as replaceable as me," when she's not. She's a clone. And thus we get this. The reason why Fuyutsuki agreed to kill Kaji is not because he hates Kaji. I don't really believe that Fuyutsuki really hates anyone. He just kind of gives that off as a persona. But he agrees to go along with Seile and kill Kaji because... Now, this is just my speculation. This is just my speculation what's going on. Agree or disagree, this is just what I think happened rewatching the show rewatching this episode considerably over and over and over again. Is that he doesn't want to get replaced. He feels important. He feels like this is where he needs to belong. If he gets replaced, he'll probably just wind up hanging himself, just like Brooks in Shawshank Redemption. Now, of course, Misato doesn't know that Kaji has just been executed in cold blood. But he has, and she comes home, she says, "I'm home," and nobody answers, and we see that Shinji's also home, but Shinji's sleeping. Shinji is just listening to his recorder, and he's sleeping. Considering the hell that he went through beforehand, kind of makes sense that he'd be sleeping, because, well, basically he was basically regurgitated by the Eva. And of course Misato just sits down, she starts kind of meditating. She's just like, taking deep breaths in and out, and she sees that somebody's left a message for her, and it is from Kaji. This is the saddest moment in Evangelion. And considering how many sad moments are in this show, and the fact that this one takes the cake of the field trips, says a lot. I don't want to talk about this, but I guess I'm kind of obligated to, since I'm the one that got myself into this fucking show. Kaji's message is beautiful. He basically apologizes for all the fuck-ups he made. Okay, let's just go from the beginning. First off, he apologizes to Misato for the trouble that he's given her. Finally. And you know what? That's the first time we ever see Kaji apologize for anything. Which is a nice moment for his character. Too bad he's fucking dead. And then he's also saying, can you apologize to Ritsuko for me as well? Which I thought was an even nicer moment, because there's a picture in here that's supposed to be a picture of all three of them together, happy, which they never are from this point on. Which makes it even more tragic. And then the line that makes me choke up. In fact, I'm suppressing being choked up here. That's how wonderful this is. He goes, oh, just to bother you some more, I've been growing a plant, and I'd like you to keep watering it for me. Shinji knows where it is. His watermelons. And that gets her, Misato, to start crying. She starts crying. And I think that this is what wakes Shinji up. But we'll get into that a little later.
I'd appreciate it if you could water it for me. Shinji knows where it is. Katsuragi, the truth is with you. Don't hesitate. Move ahead.
And then he says the line, Katsuragi, the truth is with you. Don't hesitate. Move on. And she actually smiles at this. And you know what's just breathtaking about this? Because then immediately after, she just falls the fuck apart again. What's beautiful about this scene is that they go through every step of how humans deal with loss. There's apparently 7 steps. 7. I can do math. 7 steps of how humans deal with it. And she goes through every single one of them in 30 seconds. Which I think is just a testament to the animation and the voice actress. Because at first she's in denial. She doesn't want to hear it. But she clicks the button anyways. Then the memories flow back. And then she feels happy with those memories in her head. She's always going to have those memories in her head. And how much she loved Kaji. And then she just breaks down and it goes on from there. And she finally, in the next episode, accepts that he's dead. Wonderful. I mean, not wonderful, but absolutely wonderfully executed. And I think beautifully done.
If I can see you again, I will say the words that I could not say 8 years ago. Bye.
This message was recorded at 2:03.
And the last line we get from Kaji is, if I see you again, I'll tell you the words that I couldn't 8 years ago. Meaning he was going to finally say, I love you. And Misato loses it. Shinji, of course, sees her, but doesn't know what to do. Well, actually, I think Shinji knows what to do, but he just looks at it as himself. What Shinji does whenever he feels that way is he goes and basically runs away. He basically hides and just deals with it himself. And it's what he probably feels is good for Misato. In fact, he says, he's like, all I did was run away. How childish of me, looking at it back in hindsight. And it's so sad, because we finally see Misato just fucking lose it. And that's what really sells this scene. It's just how she fucking loses it. Just breaks down, crying, and it's not just because of Kaji, it's everything that's happened. This is basically, there's a line in Gods and Generals where General Jackson starts crying, and And one of his soldiers said, "Why is he crying? Out of all the death you've seen, he's crying over a little girl." And then his assistant goes, "I think he's crying for them all." And that's what's going on here. She's not just crying for Kaji, she's crying for everything she's fucked up, everyone's life she's screwed up. She's crying for Shinji, she's crying for Asuka, she's crying for herself, she's crying for Ritsuko, she's crying for Gendo, she's crying for everything. She's crying for the world's fucking troubles. And that was that episode. So, if I didn't depress you here, stay tuned for the next one, and this is Adam Noyce from Adam Noyce saying, sayonara.